Hey there, just a note about today's episode. This was recorded with Rob Lowe before the SAG AFTRA strike began. We very much stand in solidarity with our union members. We have removed segments of the conversation that were directly promotional for Rob's most recent projects. We have left intact the conversation where we're talking about projects from the past and the emotional experience, of course, rather than rather than anything promotional in nature. So again, before the strike, we are honoring the guidelines that we understand, and we hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you.
Guys, if I look a little more nervous than usual, it's because I thought Rob Lowe walked in the room and I had a full-on panic attack.
Nava and I have been having like a low-level panic attack since last night because we realized that Rob Lowe is in person.
We were told it was over Zoom.
We've done plenty of interviews with guests in person, but never without Penn.
Never without Penn. There's a very serious, panicky text thread where we're like, no, he's not in person. We're like, the document was updated to say in person. We were like, no way.
This is not going to be good. You can't be the first impression.
You're gonna humiliate me. That's how Ben is feeling.
No, I'm actually like super relaxed, and I'm just here to comfort Rob.
That's one of us.
Is what I'm here to do. There's no comforting you two. I think you're really.
Yeah.
It's really, really funny because suddenly all of our middle school vibe, it's right here on display. The two of you are a Twitter.
I'm in 7th grade right now.
Yeah.
I'm going into the middle school dance with a heartthrob.
I had a crush on Rob Lowe in middle school, guys. I was born in the 80s. He was like the icon of the 80s. I watched all those movies. I'm like freaking out.
After the research, I think I now currently have a crush on Rob Lowe. It's really remarkable what he's done.
It really is.
It's true.
I don't know if there's been anyone who's been as like relevant as him for so long.
Are we in danger of gushing about him as he walks in?
Yeah, I
that's not a
actually
great
keep
look.
looking out of the corner of my eye.
Guys, I have a career to protect here. Okay? I mean, we're slowly chipping away at it. Yes, fair. But, like, there's a foundation still.
He's like, let me have at least 3 more years in the spotlight. Gotta slow. A war of attrition, guys. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, so we have Rob Lowe. I don't know how you don't know who Rob Lowe is, but in case you need the introduction, I mean, what? He's got Parks and Rec, West Wing, films like Tommy Boy, Wayne's World, Thank You for Smoking. There's so many. He's the original iconic The Outsiders with the Brat Pack. He's got a podcast that I was on. It's called Literally with Rob Lowe. We literally have Rob Lowe right here, right now. Don't you miss it. Welcome to Pod Crushed. We're your hosts. I'm Penn.
I'm Nava.
And I'm Sophie.
And I think we could have been your middle school besties.
Binge watching Brat Pack movies together all night long.
Hello, Rob. I feel like we're old friends at this point. We're not.
I know,
but I'm just clarifying for anyone listening. Like, it would be great, but like, no, I came on your show, but I already feel some sort of really special kinship. So,
but that's the point of my podcast, and certainly this one is like, there's something about talking to somebody on a podcast. It's really, really different than anything else, and I feel that way. I feel like I've met so many people. Now they're my buddies. Now when I have a party and I have to keep the guest list small, it's even more of a nightmare. Because I'm planning
Listen, you can always count us off. Like, I'm just taking the pressure off.
Oh, thank you very much. That's helpful.
Did you say you're planning a big birthday?
I am. I'm planning my 60th birthday.
Wow.
And I'm like, it feels to me like there's got to be a mathematical error somewhere.
It looks like it.
It's like
it doesn't seem possible.
It doesn't feel possible. I can tell you that. It doesn't feel possible at all. But I feel like I got to own it.
Yeah, totally. For sure.
I can't run from it.
I think my 30th birthday was the beginning of the myth of youth or the myth of age. Something happened, and I started to feel lighter and younger than ever. And it's only, into my mid-30s where I'm like, okay, that knee thing never used to happen as much. Or, it's like, the back thing, like I'm not a spring chicken, so that's the only part of me that feels like it's not getting younger, which is my body.
Yeah, my and then the way I look at life a little bit is definitely is changed. It doesn't feel like older, but it's definitely different. Like in little things like I'm an avid insane skier, right?
Okay.
And I'm like, well, you know what? I can get off the mountain by 3. I don't have to go to the last lift. Like those kind of things that would never have occurred to me.
Do you have like more grace for yourself, do you think?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Or like, you know what? You actually don't like bowling.
Yeah.
You don't. You don't like
You don't have to go every
You've tried it 50 times in your life. You've been like,
That's enough.
okay, I'll go to bowl. Sure, bowling's kind of cool. And then I'm like, I fucking hate this.
Rob, before we get any further, something that we're starting talking about age in some manner, and like I think a consensus that's come from this show is that youth is hard on the young. You know, there are all kinds of reasons that it really shouldn't be, and they're largely social and cultural forces, right? But like it is. It's actually very hard. And I mean, you know, you and the entire Brat Pack was established on that kind of storytelling. You know what I mean? Like so many.
Yeah.
Also, one of the things that you're most known for, take it or leave it, for better or worse, I don't know how you wrestle with it. This heartthrob business, this teenage heartthrob business. I mean, did you ever have an awkward phase? You know?
Oh, did I ever have an awkward phase?
I would bet you did, but some might not think so.
I would bet you didn't.
No, I did because I was super pretty. I mean, I look like
I can imagine.
Dude, I look like fucking Brooke Shields.
Yeah.
You still do.
No, like Google me at 15.
Okay.
I look like if Brooke Shields had a Farrah Fawcett Majors haircut.
Yeah.
Right?
And you know that like, and guys don't like that. Like other guys, like, hey, you know who I want to play? I want to pick for you know, football today or dodgeball. I want to pick the guy that looks like Brooke Shields. Yeah. So the guys aren't down with that at all.
Yeah.
And the girls aren't down with that.
Really?
No, they're like, they want like, you know,
Rough.
yes, as they still do. They want bad boys, which I later learned how to become. Got that lesson loud and clear. But they want, so I would say for me, it was like, my awkward period was 12 to like 15, 17, which coincides, not coincidentally, with getting a little bit famous.
Yeah.
Which helps
Yeah.
a lot.
Did your parents ever say anything to you about that? Did you ever talk to your parents about feeling like too pretty or feeling, you know, like
My
you didn't fit in?
mother once told me, it wasn't a deathbed confession. My mom passed away many years ago. It wasn't a deathbed, but it was something that she had not chosen to share with me until the fact that she is on her way out. That she was very afraid that my nose wouldn't grow.
It's too small.
Yeah, she
Is that a little triangle on
she
your face?
She was like, you have a perfect little nose.
Aw.
And I was just hoping it would grow.
So cute, Rob.
It makes me laugh.
Yeah, that's really sweet.
That's really sweet.
And by the way, thank you, Mom, for not sharing that with me.
At an impressionable
At an
age.
impressionable
Such a weird
age.
phobia. Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit more about your tween self? Like, what were you like? What were you into? Just describe yourself at that age.
I was in school. I was a pleasure to have in class, which also didn't do me any favors.
Yeah, with the friends.
Yeah. Now the cool kids, you know, in the back of the, and by the way, the back, for whatever reason, the back of the bus was the cool place.
Oh, yeah.
Same.
I was always sat in the front row of everything I ever went to. Always raised my hand. My mom was an English teacher, so maybe I got it from that. So not cool. Took school pretty seriously. Wasn't good at everything, but was like, I could never get, like, guys, we're gonna ditch on Wednesday. I was like, ditch. It was like we're gonna murder somebody on Wednesday. I was like, no way. Like I literally could not. I ditched once in my entire life,
Wow.
and I just was that guy. I was
What
like,
did you do when you ditched that one time?
I finally got it. I was like in eighth grade and was just starting to feel cool. And like a bunch of the cool kids were going to La Costa Beach Club, where they were going to play beach volleyball. And so...
Were there lots of Germans?
Yeah, I was going to say.
What was that? Yeah. Maybe that's better. That's better. Yeah. I was doing my Arnold impersonation in the car, and it's just
It's there. It's with you.
yeah. Once I start doing Arnold, it's over. He becomes my go-to de facto. But yeah, that was so. I was really working on my career. I was taking, like when my baseball team, I love playing baseball. Like I would have to miss practice to get on the bus to go to auditions, and
This is in high school now, right?
yeah,
So-
in junior high too.
Really? You were auditioning then?
I was auditioning from the time I got out here, from 13 on.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So that's kind of perfect. That's right where we believe so many seeds are planted. So like, what was your relationship to art and performing then? Kind of thinking of its most spiritual essence. At that age, that's when we suddenly are like awake to those things. Like,
Oh yeah.
what maybe just describe yourself then and your experience then.
Well, one thing I think about a lot is I didn't have older brothers or sisters. So the only things that I liked and that I was exposed to were the things that I liked and was exposed to,
Yeah.
which is a whole thing. Like, like no one ever gave me Led Zeppelin. Like, and I think that's like, I don't think you naturally as an 11-year-old go, wow, I want to listen to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Or frankly, like it.
Right.
Yeah.
I just don't think you do.
No.
You like it if your older brother is smoking pot down the way with a girl in the room. All of a sudden you're like, yeah, I fucking love Led Zeppelin.
That's so
Totally
true.
makes sense.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was a whole group, there's a whole like thing that I never got. Like I liked, pop music. I liked what I heard on the radio. I liked Elton John. I liked Fleetwood Mac. Still do. Like
Yeah.
I'm dressed like I'm in yacht. Look at what I'm wearing right now. I mean, I not only do I like yacht rock, I'm dressed like I'm working on a yacht.
Are you yelling after this?
Yeah. I don't know if Penn got the chance to see the pants, but
I didn't know, but
Yeah.
it's very yachty.
Yeah. We'll send you a picture later.
Yeah. But again, it goes with my, pleasure to have in class vibe.
Easy listening. Or,
But I did discover Saturday Night Live on my own at 12. And that was a life changer, obviously,
yeah.
for me, because, I ended up working in that world and hosting the show a bunch and doing all those movies that were that had their genesis on SNL.
totally, yeah.
And I remember seeing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I probably would have been, I think 11 or 12. And being so blown away that I saw it 11 times and took a tape recorder into the movie theater and taped it.
Whoa. You
What about it
bootlegged
really like spoke to
Bootlegged
you?
it.
Yeah.
Bootlegged it.
What about it was like so impactful to you?
I mean, probably the performance. I mean, listen, there's a reason that it swept every category in the Oscars for the first time in,
I didn't realize it was the first one.
It was the second time it had ever happened.
Wow.
So it's funny, my taste in that was super sophisticated, music not so much, but in terms of movies and TV, I knew what I liked really young, and it formed who I was, who my heroes were.
So can you walk us through sort of your getting into, and this is probably a story you've told many times, but we love to hear it, sort of how you got into acting, what those first few years were like?
Well, I started when I was living in Ohio, in Dayton, Ohio, and my parents took me to a local community theater. It was doing Oliver. I can only imagine how bad it must have been, like a community theater version of Oliver. But I think it might have been the first time I had ever seen a play.
Wow.
And I just was, I hate to use the word gobsmacked, but I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
I couldn't, and there were kids in there because, Oliver has the little, little MacGuffins, whatever the hell they are called. I haven't seen Oliver in a long time. The MacGuffins? No, a MacGuffin is a plot device. That, whatever the hell they
I
are.
don't know.
Yeah.
Orphans?
Orphans. Please, sir. I
Yeah.
want
Yeah,
some
yeah.
more, sir.
That's all I remember.
Hungry kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Had starving kids in it. And I was literally was like, as like Brando says in Apocalypse Now, I was shot with a diamond bullet right through the forehead. And I knew that I wanted to be an actor. Like,
yeah, wow.
but like with all of the great ignorance of youth. Like, of course, yeah, I'm just I'll just, come right out the theater in Dayton, Ohio and be a movie star because that's the way it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that is the case for so many kids, I feel like. At that age, so many children want to be actors because it's something you're exposed to, and it seems really cool and glamorous. So what was your path after that from Dayton, from watching Oliver in Dayton, Ohio?
I did the children's workshops in the summers. Instead of going to like basketball camp, I was doing like theater camp. And, anytime there was a kid role, there was a lot of summer stock in the area, which was great. I don't know if there still is. That was a great thing. So anytime they needed a kid, like I was there to do it. And there was one other kid who was my nemesis. And it was always down between he and I.
I love that. I really like that.
If you rolled into Dayton, and there was a great thing called the Kenley Players. So the Kenley Players it was amazing. It was a summer stock touring company that would play the memorial halls of all of the Midwestern cities in the summer. And they would get, for each play, a star on their hiatus from their TV show in Hollywood and offer them I don't know what the numbers would have been in those days, $30K for the month, which in those days was kind of a lot. So you'd end up with Henry Winkler doing Grease on a bus and truck thing. And they would go to all these little towns, but then they would pepper the cast with locals. And so that was something that I aspired to. I never got the Kenley Players. I clearly
Did your
wasn't.
nemesis get it?
My nemesis did get it.
But then you got everything after.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made up for.
Do we know who your nemesis is? Probably
yes.
not.
Noel somebody.
Yeah.
That says
Noel,
it all.
nobody.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Sorry, Noel.
Oh, the one person we ever really hurt with this show. Nobody.
Yeah.
Wow. And then what was the journey to the Brat Pack like?
So my parents divorced. I did not want to come to California. I was at that age of development where your friends are starting to be the most important thing in your life. I was 12,
Yeah.
just turning 13. And you'd think you're moving to Southern California. You want to be an actor? You're moving to California. No, didn't want to go.
Wow.
Was very sad about it. The only reason we were moving was my mom's and my future stepfather practiced medicine in LA, and my mom had really bad allergies, so we picked Point Dume, Malibu, because of its air quality.
Wow.
Really?
Wow.
Thank
cool.
God! Thank God the air quality was not in Saugus Newhall
Yeah.
or whatever. It was Point Dume.
Yeah.
And,
What an amazing place to
beautiful.
grow up. It's stunning.
and in those days, it was really, really, really middle class. So,
Really?
It
Okay.
was firemen and teachers and
Wow.
yeah, it was people who bought their homes in 1968 for $65,000.
Wow.
And so a lot of those people, by the way, are still there in Malibu, although it's changed
Yeah.
entirely. But when I lived there, it was very, very sort of middle working class,
Wow.
and felt like it might as well have been a million miles away from show business. And then I got an agent, and I didn't know what an agent was. I had to learn. And I cold called a girl who used to go to my junior high, who was on a Cloris Leachman TV series called Phyllis, and she played the daughter, and she was like an icon. It's like, wow. I mean, you would have thought she was Kristen Stewart.
Wow.
And I cold called her and said, "Hi, I'm the pleasure to have in class.
I'd be a pleasure on set.
You don't know me, but how do I become an actor?"
Yeah.
And she was probably like, "What the fuck is this kid calling me for?"
Yeah.
But she told me about an agent, so I dutifully went and got an agent and started taking the bus into auditions.
Wow. I feel like that tells us so much about you. You're
Yeah.
sort of courageous, willing to take risks.
Oh, shameless. I had such there's never been a goyim with more chutzpah.
That's amazing.
I was once when I still lived in Ohio. Liza Minnelli had just won the Academy Award for Cabaret, and we were having lunch in a restaurant in a hotel, and I saw a bunch of travel cases going by with a stencil on it that said Liza Minnelli. And I went to the front desk. I said, "Is Liza Minnelli staying here?" And they go, "Yeah." And I go, "What room is she in?"
Whoa. And they told you?
They told me
Because he's so pretty.
because my nose was so small.
Yeah. That must be her daughter.
They're like, a kid with that small of a nose cannot be. That must be Liza's daughter. No, they probably thought I was Tatum O'Neal. Because in those days, I really looked like Tatum O'Neal from Paper Moon. And I went up to, and this is my other favorite thing is like, what were my parents thinking?
They knew. They let you.
Oh yeah, I was like, I'm going to go up to Liza Minnelli's room,
Whoa.
They're probably like, sure, give it a try.
and I did, and I went up, and it was answered by the Tin Man's kid, Jack Haley Jr. And because he was married to Liza at the time, and he was in a white robe.
Oh.
And he said, "Hello." I said, "Hi, is Liza Minnelli there?"
So crazy, Rob.
And cringy, a little cringy.
You also
Yeah.
said both names. You could have at least said Liza.
I love it.
Is Liza?
You know,
yeah.
like maybe
Yeah,
you're
no,
on
I was-
speaking
Played it off.
terms.
I was too much of a nerd. I was like,
Yeah.
Miss Minnelli?
Yeah.
so he invited me in. And I
Wow.
came in, and Liza was also in a robe. As I recall, she was drinking something, and it was maybe noon,
Okay.
and eating chocolates.
Nice. The
Wow.
life.
And she was in her robe, and we had a wonderful talk.
What did you talk about?
Talked about acting
Mhm.
and Hollywood, and I mean, she must have had a lot of feelings about a child actor
Yeah.
Yeah.
showing up at her
Yeah.
door.
Yeah.
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 And she couldn't have been nicer. And years later, during the height of the Brat Pack, I met Liza. We actually had the same agent, and we got introduced, and I got to tell her that story.
Did she
And
remember you?
It blew her mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
And she invited me to sit front row at the Hollywood Bowl and watch her, and I
Wow.
did. And that's that kind of kismet full circle stuff that I think is
Yeah.
really amazing.
That is
That's
amazing.
incredible.
That's an incredible
Really?
story.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and just to underscore, you were what, maybe like 13 or 14 at this point, or were you like
Oh,
16?
I was younger. No, God, no. When I went to Liza's room, I was probably 11 or 12 at the absolute
Aw,
oldest.
that
That
must really
might
so
be,
sweet,
that will
Rob.
probably stand as like maybe our most emblematic and iconic middle school story. Like that's
Yeah.
just because it also just it directly translates into what you've done, who you seem to
Yeah.
much of who you seem to be. You know, I mean that's
Yeah.
really incredible.
I've always just sort of gone for it. Just go for it.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
incredible.
Did that translate to? Because part of what we also talk about, partly because it's fun and funny, but it also I think it can open up those other dimensions of the heart. What was it like for you with girls and relationships, crushes? I mean, you know, because that's such an important part that's developing
Oh.
for the first time in life.
Oh my
right? Like,
God! The only reason I got my first big job, and by big I mean big, it was starring on a network sitcom at 15, was because I just fell in love for the first time,
Wow.
and I had to go back to Ohio for the summers. That was how I visited my father in the summers, and I loved it. I loved going back to Ohio and visiting. It was great. It was never like I didn't want to do it. This year I didn't want to go because I I'm talking like the week before, you know, not first kisses, but like a lot of firsts. And
Yeah.
it was like, and she was so beautiful. I still have a thing for her.
Sweet. That's really sweet.
And it was very romantic. Her dad was a rock star. Dad was
Wow.
the lead singer for Three Dog Night.
Don't know it.
Don't know it. Yeah, you got.
Nava, come on, you don't know
that
Three
up.
Dog Night?
I want to look into
They are pretty sick. Very yacht rocky.
Okay.
Anyway,
so you're still trying to impress her, basically.
Yeah.
You're still,
yes,
yeah, that's
right.
Persona. Okay.
yeah, that's what I do. So I didn't want to go to Ohio. I was heart sick, heart sick, shell. Go to Ohio. I'm there for however long, week, maybe 10 days, into what's going to be, you know, I think I was there supposed to be there 6 weeks, which is an eternity. And I get a call from my agent, and it's a shitty little like they represent like commercial actors and like hand models, and they go, "Hey, there's a TV show that you could audition for." I'd never auditioned for a TV show, never. All I'd ever auditioned for were commercials because that's all this agency got, and I was too dumb to know. It's just an audition. It's what people do. I somehow got it in my head that they knew about me, maybe, and
be called in.
and also knew that if I went back home, I'd get to see my girlfriend. So I paid for my own airline ticket.
Wow.
And flew home, and I was with my girlfriend and so happy. And oh, by the way, I went on the dumb audition and I got it.
That's amazing.
Wow.
So when you talk about first love, all of that stuff, that also happens to completely inform who I am. Because if I'm not in that show, I don't get in the teen magazines. And if I'm not in the teen magazines, when Francis Ford Coppola sends his casting people to 7-Eleven,
Right.
He sends them to 7. Oh, yeah.
get the teen magazines to put up on a wall,
Yeah.
I don't know if I get the outsiders.
Right.
And if I don't get the outsiders, then I really don't know what happens.
Yeah. Wow. What was it like when you guys broke up? Was that like your first big heartbreak?
Yeah, she left me for, again, like a surfer, like a
Aw.
really good looking, gnarly, juvenile delinquent slash surfer whose dad grew pot on the property and
Wow.
might have run a sort of like petty theft ring out of the backyard.
Wow.
Yeah.
The antithesis
That's
Bad
of
boys.
you.
Yeah.
Bad
Yeah.
boys.
Oh.
Rob, we've talked a little bit about how you have been bold in many scenarios, but I've also heard you describe yourself as a Midwestern people pleaser. And I want to know, as someone who is also a people pleaser, is that something that you have tried to combat, or have you kind of just embraced that quality?
Okay, so I've embraced it here. So it's a blessing and a curse.
Mm-hmm.
It can totally get you into a lot of trouble.
Mm.
I mean, for me, historically, I was once asked to do an opening number on the Academy Awards, and I'm a people pleaser. I'm an actor. So when the Academy calls you and says, "Will you do this?" You don't think twice. You do it. It ended up being one of, up until Will Smith smacked Chris Rock.
Just very recently.
But no one was happier. I was elated because finally it by the way, it didn't knock me off Oscar's most embarrassing moments. You'd think it should be. That's so iconic.
Yeah.
But the picture of me doing a duet with Snow White will be right under that picture of Chris Rock going like, oh, we looks like Lee Harvey Oswald being shot, making the same face. It's like but that all comes from me being a people pleaser. So it cuts both ways.
Did you have a sense that it wasn't a good act? Like you said yes, and then when you saw it, were you nervous or were you surprised by the reaction to it?
What I neglected to properly comprehend was the curing cancer Nobel laureate level with which the Oscars are taken. I had thought it was a celebration of the industry and movies and glamour and acting, and I'd missed the message about how serious this event is.
Yeah, right.
I just missed it. I didn't know.
Yeah.
You mean you
And-
actually saw reality and everybody else was a little bit deluded.
Yeah.
You know, because I think it's funny that you say curing cancer, because I feel like growing up on sets, whenever I'm trying to relay something to somebody about it, something that comes up I notice is like the level of urgency on a set. You know, the level of urgency in Hollywood around what it makes is so high. You know, it is as though you're curing cancer or going to the moon.
Oh, and some are worse than others. I remember on The West Wing. Now, granted, The West Wing was, whoever's at the top of the food chain sets the culture.
Yeah.
on anything. And on a movie set, it's the director, and on a TV set, it's the writer, showrunner. And Aaron Sorkin is one of the most he's one of the most talented, but also intense people you'll ever meet. And then you had, other people who made Aaron seem like Mr. Rogers. And so when you literally that set crackled with importance and intensity.
Wow.
And I loved it because it was great writing and I knew what it was. But you would have thought we were diving to the depths of the Titanic every day and we're worried about a pressure crack. You literally would have thought.
Wow, that's amazing. I was going to ask this question later, but you have said maybe kind of like jokingly, flippantly, that your wife is not interested in your work and won't watch any of the interviews that you do.
No, of course not.
Yeah, which I kind of love that. I think that's like, leave work at work.
She's heard all the stories.
Yeah. That's right.
She's heard them all. She knows how small my nose is.
Yeah.
She knows all about it.
I was thinking like, wow, I feel like as someone who's not
By the
an
way, can I
actor-
just say, in the 80s, having a small nose was a real hindrance.
Really?
Oh, yeah. If you're going to put stuff up it.
All right.
That's right.
What kind of stuff, Rob?
But I was thinking about that, and as someone who's not an actor, is acting, does it feel like just a job for you, or does it encompass more than that?
I like to look at myself as, there are sometimes when I consider myself, it's hard for me to say because it sounds so pretentious even using the word. And actors, you throw this word around so freely, God bless them. Sometimes I consider myself an artist. Sometimes.
Yeah.
That's when I go, you know what? I think I have a one-man show in me. I think I do. And then I imagine it, I write it, I stage it, and it tours the world. That's and then doing a one-man, that's artistry.
Yeah.
A lot of the time I think of myself as a craftsman, though. And that's when somebody gives me a script and I'm a fine carpenter. I can come in and make this architectural blueprint spectacular, hopefully. Or if not spectacular, at least something that I feel like I can give something that only I can give. So I think most of the time acting is really what you are is more of a craftsman.
Yeah. That
like that
resonates with me.
distinction.
I've never
as
heard
well.
anyone say that. I love that, Rob.
Yeah.
Penn, why haven't you ever said it that way?
Because I'm just on the first half. I'm just like, definitely not an artist. What's the other thing?
Wow.
So being a part of something like The Outsiders at such a kind of like a vital moment where you're entering the prime of your youth. It also is a story about the youth, and particularly masculine youth, and particularly how hard it can be, and I'm just curious how being.
I got a great story.
Please
for you on
go.
this. First of all, I'm assuming I have two things I want to talk about. First, and we'll get to both of them. But what came up for me just now here as you're asking this is I'm assuming you guys are aware of the fact that you're frozen in time developmentally the year you get famous, right? You've talked about this before.
We've not
I'm
talked
assuming.
about this. No.
We've not said it so explicitly or outwardly, but I'm certainly. Yeah, there's all kinds of.
But wanna hear more.
Development.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, write that.
Write
Make a
it
note of
down.
it because I want, but I also want to talk about
Yes, come back.
because you're asking something I think really sort of original and interesting about masculine adolescence coming into your own.
Yeah.
The Outsiders and the theme of it. And one of the things I loved about that movie was the love between young men, which is very rarely portrayed. And there was a scene so when The Outsiders came out, the director, Francis Ford Coppola, dramatically chopped it up, and only 20 years later did he finally release the movie that we made. And he's on record as saying he should have just released the movie that he made. So it took 20 years for the original, for the good one to come out. So in the original one that came out, they had cut a bunch of scenes. One of them was one of my favorites, and it's me and Ponyboy. So we're brothers. I'm Soda Pop, he's Ponyboy. And we're raising each other, and we have this tiny little house, and we're lying in bed together, cuddling.
Aww.
And we're talking about our parents. And it's the sweetest.
so
It's one of my
sweet.
favorite scenes. It's only in, if you're going to watch The Outsiders, please watch The Outsiders, The Complete Novel, it's called. Forget the other one. The Outsiders, The Complete Novel. And they cut it because at the first test screening, all the teenage boys went berserk. Gay,
Wow.
fags,
Right.
gay,
Wow.
yuck.
Even though you're brothers.
And
That's
so
wild.
that was cut.
Wow.
So that says a lot about our culture and where we
Yeah.
are and stuff like that. So when I think of The Outsiders and that question, I'm always reminded that was the magic of it, and it kind of got stomped on until many cuts later, because it's not a subject that a 14-year-old 15-year-old any teenage boy wants to deal with.
Right. Or
want to
actually,
talk
I mean,
about-
I think a lot of men is also the problem.
Yeah.
A lot of men.
When you were filming it, I mean, you said it was one of your favorite scenes, but when you were filming it, were you nervous at all? Like, because you're in that world.
We were all of us in love with each other.
Right.
We were all
sweet.
and to this day, when I see anybody from that group, whether it's Tom Cruise or see Tommy Howell or Matt Dillon, any of them, it's like, it was our first time away from home. It was like, rolling into your freshman dorm at
Right.
college.
Yeah.
And and Tommy was only 15.
Wow.
And were you guys having those conversations about, like, because that's what happens when you're, I'm assuming in some form you did, because like when the best version of being an actor is that you're having this opportunity to very consciously explore these dimensions of like the human experience that if you're just living life, sometimes you try to avoid because it's uncomfortable or whatever. You know what I mean? You're going to the uncomfortable place and making it your work to be there for these like long periods of time and depicting something of it. So how much of that were you really just kind of underscoring what Nava was saying, like when you're filming scenes like that, or just, knowing how, like, for instance, violent Matt Dillon's character was, but how also incredibly charismatic and charming that kind of young man is in our culture. Like how deep were you getting at that point into
Deep.
that,
Deep. It was and it was a great, because it was my first movie, it was great training. There are very few directors like Francis.
Yeah.
And it was hours of improv and living together and all kinds of rehearsals that most people don't even do anymore at all,
Yeah.
let alone at the level that we did them.
Wow.
And it was super intense. I've never been on anything that was as intense as The Outsiders was, in terms of the depth with which we all explored the work.
Wow.
And
love
and
that.
that was led by Francis, because it's the man who made fucking Apocalypse Now, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Rob, let's go back to the question. I did write it down.
Yes.
So we're going to come back to this idea that you're frozen in time the year that you become famous.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think if you look around at anybody, just pick your favorite famous person, and unless they've done a lot of work on themselves, they're frozen at that time. And until I got sober and started doing work on myself, as I got sober at 26, so I was for sure frozen at 18. Yeah, I was frozen at 18 years old. I mean, I had a glimpse of fame at 15 from the TV series I got because of the girlfriend.
Yeah.
But it was short-lived. And then, sort of banging around Hollywood, not really, working, trying to figure it out again. And then Outsiders happened. And
Yeah.
Outsiders came out when I was 18, 19. So that's you kind of everybody starts taking care of you.
Yeah.
The world's your oyster. You got a lot of money. You don't have to worry about whether a girl likes you or not, because it's going to happen no matter what you do. It's great.
Wow.
You know, you can go anywhere. People want things. Then people start wanting things for you and from you, and then you get defensive and you get closed down. So all this kind of chemical stuff happens to you.
Yeah.
And that's just where you end up.
What did 26-year-old Rob right before he got sober look like? Like, what pushed you into that path of sobriety and doing the work?
You know, God bless, I had that little voice inside me going, I don't know if this is sustainable, you know. And I had met my now wife. We were dating, and I couldn't really make it work because I was too wild. I'd learned to be the bad boy.
Yeah.
I'd learned that the pleasure to have in class.
Oh, that
Really-
kind of breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were pushed into it.
I'm not. This is really this is the truth. This was my story.
Yeah.
And by the way, the first time I actually played a bad boy on screen was when I really blew up, and that was in St. Elmo's Fire.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So
So I was like, yeah, okay, I got it.
yeah.
This is who I am. I'm the lovably irresponsible, life of the party bad boy. And I just ran with it. And by the way, it was great. If you're going to have if you're going to have an archetype
Yeah.
you're going to chase in your 20s as a single guy, that's a pretty good archetype.
with the guarantee that you'll make it through. Because I think what's key is that you.
That's true.
I mean, because I'm with you. It's like, your story is amazing because you went to the edge and came back, and you know, that's like,
That's true.
you know, those who go there and come back are able to share the wisdom. But I think the danger, of course, we all know, is that, like, you know, not everybody comes back.
No, and there's no. I mean, I knew. So I saw the movie Shampoo. People have been telling me to see it. I'd never seen it. I obviously was a filmophile, and I just hadn't seen it. And when I saw it, I felt like, oh my God, they've made a movie about me. And I was a huge Warren Beatty fan. Like, he was one of my idols, and the notion that at the end of it, he's charming, he's good looking, he's got everything going on. The girls love him, the guys want to be him, and at the end of the day, he is left alone on the top of Mulholland. And I was like, this is me. This is me. This is where it goes right here.
Wow.
It's Christmas Eve, and I'm alone. And so I had that little, and of course I was like, yeah, that's great, and I ignored it. But I always had that little voice. And then so when the time came when I was ready to make a change, I gave up the drinking and the carousing, and was able to fulfill what that voice had been telling me.
Wow.
As I understand it, like, pursuing sobriety, that, like, process includes some, like, thought or discussion about, like, a higher power.
Sure. Yeah.
What's your feeling or your belief about that now?
So when I first got sober, I was never raised in a religious family, and not even a spiritual family. In fact, my family might even have been agnostics, unspoken agnostics.
Yeah.
My grandparents were, country club Methodists, right? So I knew that church was the place you had to put the nice clothes on and swelter in the summer and just be miserable. That was my entire thing.
Wow.
And you would go sometimes with your grandparents?
Yeah, and sometimes hide in a closet. Maybe they would not find me and I wouldn't have to go. That's one of my childhood memories.
Yeah. Wow.
Meanwhile, now I know they knew exactly where I was.
Yeah.
But my memory was I was able to hide as if, like, for hours they couldn't find me. But so that was where my spiritual religious, that's what I had to deal with. And then I get sober and they're talking about higher power and power greater than yourself and all that stuff. And again, pleasure to have in class. This is where it works for me. I was like, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. If that's what you're telling me to do. And I also take direction for a living as an actor.
Yeah.
So I'm really good at that. So they told me to explore it. I did. Somebody told me something that worked, which is fake it till you make it. I felt very uncomfortable saying the word God. There was no way I was getting on my knees. There was no way I was praying out loud, none of it. But I could imagine someone who could.
And you acted
Interesting.
like that.
I acted like that. Yeah, I faked it till I made it. So I
Wow.
would do it sporadically enough to feel like I was doing it enough.
Yeah.
And then one day it became comfortable.
Mm.
And one day I began to have a real relationship with God.
It's beautiful.
And then one day, I mean, it got to the point where I can openly talk about it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, at this point, the last, I'd say 10 years of my life, I mean, the thing about recovery is you're always growing.
Yeah.
You're always working on something. And if you're not, you're going backwards. So the journey for me, at least in the past few years, has been deepening and being more consistent in my relationship with God and meditation. And it's beyond belief the dividends it pays. I mean it's great. I mean I have a really good relationship with my dude.
I love that. I also love when you were saying that, I was picturing it and I was feeling like I would love to see a movie like that. Like we're too scared to make movies like that, or they don't get the money or whatever. But that's
or you
like
see
a
very
beautiful
saccharine
story.
versions of that.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But that's so powerful.
Yeah, it's a secret power in it because it works.
It works totally.
God is a
100%
secret.
works.
Yeah.
No one's ever heard of
the
him.
greatest kept secret.
Rob is here to tell
actually,
us.
you know, no, seriously,
No,
there's
I agree, though.
from the Baha'i writings is the most manifest of the manifest and the most hidden of the hidden.
Yeah, that's a good
So
description.
it's not
Or as
lie.
I like
God is
to, or as
still
I
a
like to
secret.
say, God could use a better publicist.
Yeah.
That's true. It's definitely true. Yeah.
I do want to. I'm thinking of I think that is an interesting thesis that if you test is true. That like people who become famous are frozen at that age, and that's the same as. That's a trauma response in a sense. Your development
Yes.
is arrested when you experience some form of a trauma, and it's not the event itself;
Wow.
it's the way you internalize the event and respond
Totally.
to it. And right,
How about this? If it's not a trauma, I think we can all agree that it is a overwhelming earthquake shock to your system.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then it continues, and so you've now you're living through. I mean, a lot of it. And so I guess one of the things you're making a lot of things now, but something you're making now is a show called Unstable with your son, right?
Yeah.
Where I feel like in some ways you are directly breaking down the fourth wall on this notion. It's not just fame. It's also, I think, like in the case of your character, he's like the hyper successful, hyper brilliant, like archetype of a man, who's both a rogue and a genius, and but he's breaking down.
Yeah. Not only what is worldwide success and fame due to the principal, but what does it do to the people around them, right? And really, that's one of the biggest cores of the show is like, what does it do to the son of the person that everybody just falls all over?
Yeah.
And the son is like, really,
Yeah.
and then how much of that is like what really goes on in my life with my kid
Yeah.
or not? So
Yeah.
and we do have. I mean, I will just say things in my daily life, and he'll be like, "Do you realize what you just said? Do you do realize?" Right?
Wow.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, this is the life I have been, the hand I've been dealt. What do you want me to do about it?" And then I give as good as I get.
Yeah.
I'm like there's a line where I say, "I'm sorry, how many times have you had your picture on the cover of Time magazine?"
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Wow, what is
Yeah.
it like to work with your son in that capacity?
It's heaven.
Aww.
You know what? And here's why. It's not just the thing that every parent could relate to about how great, because when your kids fly the coop, you're lucky if you get them back for a Sunday dinner or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a sneaky way of getting them back. So that part of it, obviously, everybody can relate to. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I wasn't prepared for was the freedom it feels that I have knowing that I have a second brain on the set.
Aww.
Like he and I share the exact same ethos, particularly in comedy, because comedy is so subjective.
Yeah.
Like if he thinks it's funny, I think it's funny. If I think it's funny, he thinks it's funny. So I don't have to sweat every detail.
Yeah.
And when we're in the editing room, anytime I think in any business where you have a partner who you trust implicitly, like if you had to go away for a month, you know everything's in great hands. I have that with him. And that's
wonderful.
Super, super great. And I didn't know if that would be the case. For all I knew, we would battle over jokes or casting or who knows what.
Yeah, that seems like it could have been really risky.
And the other thing is he has the perspective because he's young that I don't have. I can't have the perspective of. There's a moment in the first episode where you first introduce my character, and he's crying. He's lost his wife, and he's trying to buck himself up. So he puts on music and dances naked. And we filmed it. We had the song. We did it. Whatever. And we got to like almost where we're locking the episode, and he was like, Dad, I think I have a problem with the song. I was like, what do you mean? Now you tell me? Because for my generation, it feels a little cringy on the nose. And I'm like, I think it's great. And our co-showrunner, who's even older than I am, was like, oh, I love it. So, and then Netflix loved it. And I said, okay, can you do me a favor? Get every person in the Netflix office under the age of 30 that you can, show them this sequence and ask them the question. And every person thought it was cringy.
Wow.
Interesting.
So I would never have known. I would have sailed blindly into
cringe.
Yeah, and then maybe people turn away because it's the first scene.
That's exactly right.
No, that's so significant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am pregnant right now.
Congrats.
Thanks, with my first.
Oh, boy.
And
Yay.
I'm really excited. But one of the things I was talking to my mom about that I'm nervous for is I already feel like I have so many hopes for my child and what they will be like or what they'll be into or how I'll be able to connect with them. And it's hard because a child will do what they're going to do, or they'll become interested in what they are interested in. Their temperament is not always so malleable. And I was talking to her about this, and this is making me wonder, you working with your son now and having this like incredible experience, is that something that you hoped for or that you thought you might have?
I hope they wouldn't ever go into this business.
Yeah.
Which then I realized, wait a minute, who are you to say that? You've had a great career.
Yeah.
But I also know how hard it is.
Yeah.
And how no matter how successful you get in this business, I mean, you never know if it's over or not.
Yeah.
And, Henry Fonda, to the day he died, to the day they gave him that Oscar and that with that crocheted blanket, that famous picture. From On Golden Pond, and he died 2 weeks later. To the day he died, he thought he would never work again.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, who needs that?
Yeah.
But as it turned out, he had it in him. He has it in him.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be whoever they're going to be. And I think I have, not that you've asked for it, but I do have my top 5 parental tips.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love that.
Sure, go ahead.
In no particular order, and none of these are earth-shattering. I'm not the first to come up with them, but if you invest in being with them, the dividends will be unbelievable. And it's the pickups, the drive homes, the parent-teacher, the ball games, all of that. I knew every one of their friends. I knew. Here's the thing: you don't have to know the parents. Don't you? Listen, you want to? God bless. I didn't. I had great relationships with the kids. Don't care about the parents. So, all my son's friends are like second kids to me. I know what they do, what they don't do, what they like, what's happening with them. I know everything about their lives. When they come over, I talk to them. I mean, engage them, know them. That's a thing. I'm a big believer in exposing them to be like, well, do you think it's appropriate to show my 8-year-old? And I'm like, I get why you're asking the question. I get it. But my question was, is it good? Like, I probably showed my kids stuff that was way inappropriate when they were young, but it was good.
Right. You feel like
do you know what I mean?
value.
Like, I'd rather show my kids inappropriate stuff that has artistic merit than pablum that is appropriate.
Has there been a part of parenting that was harder than you expected?
Oh my God. There's the 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 8. It was absolutely a fucking siege on my soul.
Why?
Wow.
Because, I have 2 boys full of testosterone.
Yeah.
It's the girls, sneaking the girls in this, jumping over the fence at night. Hiding the booze underneath the fucking bed. I mean, all that stuff, all of it, just brutal. As Friday would roll around, and the weekend would come, I lived in a never-ending sense of dread because I knew the bullshit was about to start coming out of their mouths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I'm just telling you, all they do is lie to you. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, I feel you. Did you ever feel like how successful were you in ever being able to leverage, like, listen, I'm Rob Lowe, and I went through I had a hand in upholding some of the archetypal behavior that you're pursuing, can I not share something of what I've learned with you,
Well, the other great thing is that they may say that they don't want to know, and they may act like they're not listening, but they are. And when my son, John Owen, decided to get sober, he's sober like 5 years now, I think.
How old is he?
He's 27.
Wow.
And he is like, my dad was always like an example. So he knew that he knew what it looked like if he wanted to make a change.
Sure, yeah.
So he was listen, they're watching everything. Listen, they're watching everything and using it to their advantage. Always.
Yeah.
So when it was to his advantage to think about getting sober, he used it.
Yeah.
They're watching everything.
Yeah.
It's a matter of what they perceive as their advantage.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's never been an entity more self-centered than a teenager.
Well, by nature. I mean, and even taking yes, it's true.
You have to
it's
be.
Funny, but even taking the judgment away from that or the valuation of that, it's true. It's neurologically, biologically, like what's happening is they're coming into all these like powers, mental and physical, but they've not yet had the experiences that would orient them outside of themselves, and especially in our culture, which is so individualistic and self-serving, so therefore it's just like magnified. That's part of what we think about in this show, It's like believing that this time in life, they're going to be oriented some way, and our culture very much orients them to self, and parents are like a matchstick in the wind sometimes with like, social forces. It's really phenomenal.
It really is.
It's like. And no one is going to come out unscathed. I love that you said it was a siege on your soul. My wife is going to love to hear that when I come home today, because ours is he's in the brink of 15, and we're having new experiences all the time.
Just shaking his head, closed his eyes.
Yeah.
He just said a silent prayer for me.
I say a silent prayer for you.
Yeah.
But again, it's normal.
Yeah.
It's nothing. It just is. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I remember those days like they're yesterday.
You were on The West Wing. We talked about it briefly. You left under circumstances that felt like took a lot of courage. And I was just wondering, like, as a people pleaser on a show that was so popular, what was that like to leave, and why did you do it? How did you muster the resolve to do it?
Here's a great question. I felt very undervalued. Whenever I talk to actors who complain about, their relationships on their shows, and sometimes it happens. It happens in any workplace. Yeah. You can be in an environment where people sandbag you, want to see you fail, don't appreciate you, try to screw whatever it is. And whenever I share my stories, people are like, "I will never share my own stories again."
Wow.
They would make your hair stand on end. And there's some of them I shared some of them in my book, but I purposely didn't share half of the other ones because it would make the people involved look so bad.
Wow.
that I didn't want to do it to them. But so I did not have a good experience. And tried to make it work and tried to make it work and tried to make it work. And then what happened was my kids were getting to a certain age where I could see them having first girlfriends or friends and being in like a relationship that was abusive and taking it. Because and the one I really thought was like the girlfriend, but she's the popular girl. Everybody likes her. She's beautiful. It must be great. All the things that people would say about Making the West Wing to me. It's so popular. It's so amazing. It must be amazing, but I know what it's like. And if I couldn't walk away from it, then how could I empower my kids to walk away from it?
Wow. I like that. So that you could connect that dot at that moment. That's really important.
It was the most. I walked away from the most popular girl at school, but I also knew that it was an super unhealthy relationship.
Wow.
And it was the best thing I ever did.
Yeah, that's inspiring.
Zero regrets. Because what people forget is the minute I left, Aaron Sorkin left, and then it wasn't the West Wing anymore.
That's right.
You know, it was ER in the White House.
Wow.
Which is perfectly fine, but I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really inspiring, Rob.
So we've actually talked we've touched on so much around this time of life. We're just going to go back for the final question. If you could go back, if you could go back to 12, 13-year-old Rob, what would you say, if anything?
I think I would just say, you know, you can relax. You don't have to make everything happen, because I was very much whether I actually was on my own or just felt on my own. It felt like that. It felt like if I didn't do it, it wasn't going to get done. And if I didn't take care of myself, nobody else would. That's what it felt like. And I think I could go back and sort of soothe that feeling. That would probably be nice.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Yeah.
Rob, you're even more delightful than I was expecting, and I had very high expectations. I don't know how it's possible.
Oh, you're
You're such a delight.
You're so nice to say that. Thank you,
It's
guys.
absolutely true.
This is great. I love these talks you guys have.
Thank you.
Pod crushed.
Thank you so much.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed crushed.
So now we know how I'm going to react. Like visibly jumped thinking that it was him coming in the room.
You hear that?